Hi, my name is Madison, and you are listening to or watching Who's Knocking, a true crime podcast. Welcome. This is a part 2. So if you just got here, I would highly suggest you go back to part 1. But you do you. Today we're doing part 2 of our series on the Hart family. The Hart family tragedy, I guess you could say. I don't have much else to say. I will say, if you are interested in true crime, I would highly suggest that you sign up for my newsletter. It is called Grim Weekly, and you can find it at grimweekly.com. You can see old issues there in my archive, and you can sign up on the website. It is fun. It is free. It's fun. So without further ado, I will give a little rundown of last week's episode just to catch you guys up. Last week, I did a little rundown of, not a little, but a pretty extensive rundown of the crash that killed the entire Hart family, all 8 family members. I shared some background of the moms, Jennifer and Sarah Hart. I did a breakdown of the evidence that led the coroner's inquest to make the decision to rule the deaths of all the children to be homicide and the deaths of the mothers to be suicide. I started on the story of what was actually going on with the Hart family behind closed doors, but also somewhat out in the open. As we recall, there were friends of Jen's who were making reports, so it wasn't like she was doing a great job of hiding her abusive behavior. I think that she was just a lot better at talking her way out of it. So that's essentially what we got to last week, and I will kind of continue where I left off now. So as all of the abuse allegations were coming in and this shitty investigation was going on, I will give you I'll tell you a little bit about what Sarah and Jen were up to with the kids and how they were coming off to the public. Sarah and Jen were taking these kids, they were homeschooling these kids, and they were taking them all over the place to these festivals, to rallies, lots of political rallies, and that was their, I guess, social circle, if you will. The kids were often dressed up in like costumes or matching t-shirts. Devontae in particular was often sporting a free hug sign, and people just loved them, and they were praised for being like such a loving, progressive family. Jennifer took these kids to a lot of music festivals in particular. And look, I don't want to judge an entire group of people. I think people do enough of that. But personally, I don't really understand what these festivals, like what they are or why they are. They're very like hippie looking. But I do notice, I think it's fair to point out about them, as they are full of almost all white people, very progressive. I get the impression that this was the type of person who was super into the Hart family because they were kind of like the embodiment of their values and like their version of social justice and like their ideology. They were very popular in these circles, and Jennifer received so much praise and attention because of it. So I get the idea that Jennifer, like, maybe this was her group to begin with, or maybe she decided to put herself in this type of social circumstance with her family because she knew that these type of people would just go nuts for it. Yeah, that's my take. Again, not trying to be super judgy, but I think this clip is a pretty fair example of like the type of thing that Jennifer was bringing her kids to. Hey, I don't know. Perhaps I would think a little bit differently had I not known the outcome of this story. But to me, this just it comes off as so performative, and I have a really hard time believing that these people would be as impressed with the Harts if these kids were like just some random white kids with a straight set of parents, you know? Had they not been like 6 black kids adopted by lesbians. I don't know. Is that crazy? The family had been featured on the news at a Bernie Sanders rally where the kids were giving out free hugs. This is, again, something that Devontae specifically was doing all the time. The moms were interviewed, and when I say moms, I mean mostly Jennifer, was interviewed, and they were talking about how proud they were of Devontae and how he started this revolution and like giving out free hugs, like, and his thing was like to give a hug and like pass it along. Devontae was constantly photographed with this free hugs thing. And it's like, okay, maybe he came up with it out of thin air and like that's something that he decided to do and put it out there. But like, I don't know, I kind of doubt it. Kids with free hug signs, I don't like it. And maybe this me just being super judgy and I don't know, but I'm sorry, I would never allow my kids to stand out in public with a free hug sign. It's like, it just feels to me like you're just like serving your kid up on a platter for just any random creepy predator to just come and touch your children. He was very young when these signs first started coming about, and these kids, we already know they look younger than they are. Like, you're just like, here, any stranger, come and hug my small child. It's not for me, I'll say. And I think that's a nice way to put it. And again, maybe Devontae came up with this on his own, but I would guess that his mother's, in particular Jennifer, probably had a lot of influence in this this thing that he was doing. So that was going on, and it was these events and rallies and whatever that Jennifer was constantly taking photos at and using it as content for her Facebook page. Jennifer was hugely into Facebook, of course. She was constantly posting photos of the family at all these rallies and festivals and events, out in nature, hiking, looking like the woke Brady Bunch, kids smiling ear to ear, like just nauseating the amount of content and the content of the content. Like it, we'll get into it. Something that I think a lot of people noticed post-tragedy was that her Facebook posts heavily centered Devontae. Devontae was like, he was definitely the star of Jennifer's Facebook page. And he was mentioned a lot more than the other kids. And both Sarah and Jen's posts are extremely cringy, like next level. Think of like the most annoying, oversharing, phony-ass person that you've seen on Facebook and multiply that by 1,000. I will read a couple posts out loud just to really paint you the picture. Here is one. This was Jen Hart posted it with Sarah Hart on November 8th, 2014. And this is like a status on Facebook. Okay. Quote. We were standing in the grocery checkout line. An elderly man was standing at the end of the bagging area, conversing with the woman checking us out. He spots our son, looks him up and down. Man, I can tell you are going to be a basketball player when you grow up. Son pauses, tilts his head, and gives a closed-mouth grin. Actually, no, baseball isn't really my thing. Man, well, I can tell you're going to be a ball player. Son, as his mom, I can tell there is a slight frustration inside him. No, I don't even play baseball. Checkout lady. Oh, I bet you're going to be a basketball or soccer player then. Son. No, I don't play any sports. It's just not my thing. There's nothing wrong with sports or anything. I just have other interests. Checkout lady. In a befuddled, nearly astonished voice. What? I have never met a kid that looks Exclamation marks. Like you that doesn't play any sports. Man, chuckling. Right? Never. They all do. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It should probably be mentioned that my face was as red as my hair at this point. It was so obviously clear what was happening. While I wanted so badly to step in and protect my son from the ongoing racial stereotyping, I didn't. I let him step into his own power and he handled it brilliantly. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Son, well, of course you've never met a kid like me. I'm one of a kind. There's not another person like me. Man, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Son, I'm here to help people. I'm here to inspire now. Man, oh, so you're going to be a doctor? As he laughed while he said it, not kidding. Son, no, I'm not. Man, well, being a doctor is the best way to help people. What are you going to do to help and inspire people? Son, putting the last of the bags in the cart. I'm going to be myself, no matter how much people try to make me something I'm not. Have a great night. Flashes ginormous smile. I think this kid will be all right, no matter what is tossed at him. End quote. Now, do we think this actually ever happened? No. I think a big fat fucking no. Okay, here's another one. This is, again, yes, this is Jen's post. Quote, woman glances at the books in his hand. I don't think your mom and dad would approve of those. I'm standing right there, by the way, and one of the books he's holding is Another Bullshit Night in Suck City. Son 1 smiles. Well, my mom is right here, and she's fine with me reading whatever I want. There's no such thing as a banned book in our house. Me, resisting the urge to high five. Yep, that's true. Woman, well, I never. They are too young to be exposed to adult literature. Asterisk, red face asterisk. Thank goodness we have a president fighting this liberal mentality ruining our children. There are banned and burned books for a reason. Ramble, ramble, ramble. Family, a bunch of emojis, all shocked and vomiting. Son 2, oh man, censorship. Sigh. It's not porn. We're all teenagers. It's actually a pretty good read. It's a memoir. We don't have to get that today because we already have it at home. I'm thankful for having the freedom to read all kinds of subject matter. Asterisk looks at me with a small grin. You'd think this would be an isolated type of experience, but similar encounters happen quite often. People assume some of the kids are a lot younger than they are because of their smaller stature. This apparently gives them all access pass to parent our children. I attribute the kids' love for reading to the fact that they've had the freedom to choose their interests and seek knowledge and entertainment that suits them. End quote. This never fucking happened. There's no way. People don't talk like this. It's just not. There's no way that happened the way that it did. And like there's post after post after post after post after post like this. Do we really think that these children talk like this? Give me a break. I have seen a lot of cringe Facebook behavior in my life. Okay, I've been on Facebook since I was in the 8th grade and I'm almost 30. So I've been there, okay? I've seen it. But this, I don't fucking know. I will post a couple more as I continue to talk. And if you'd like to pause and read them, I highly suggest you do so if you can hold it down. Jennifer's Facebook posts, they give us a very clear picture of what she was up to. Jennifer was very calculated in exactly how she wanted her family to appear. And she wanted people to believe that these kids, they came from nothing and that with her love and parenting, they'd grown to be the smartest, most loving, most compassionate people on the face of the earth. All because of her. They'd be nothing without her. In 2013, when Devontae was 12 or 13 years old, Sarah and Jen came out with this narrative on Facebook that Devontae had been addicted to drugs at age 4, and at age 4 he was smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, handling guns, and had been shot at age 4. None of this had any basis in reality. There is no documentation within the adoption agency or CPS or anything that says any of this ever happened. When Devontae and his siblings were torn from the arms of their aunt Priscilla Celestine, they were perfectly fine. They were not using drugs or alcohol, nor had they ever been involved with guns in any way, shape, or form. They came from a tragic situation, absolutely. Their mother was a drug addict, and that will fuck you up. No doubt. But he was not addicted to drugs himself. He was not involved in any of that. Now, they spun this horrific story and then went on to talk constantly about how they saved his life, and this constant posting and barrage of meticulously curated photos and parading of the children at different rallies and events at some point garnered the attention of the Huffington Post. They wrote an article on Devontae and included Sarah and Jen's lies about Devontae. In 2014, the family were in Ferguson, Missouri, and they were there to be present for the verdict of the grand jury that was happening for the cop that shot Michael Brown. And after it had been announced that the jury decided not to indict the cop, there was a big outcry, of course. There was all these rallies and marching that we all remember. And this is when this photo was taken. Now, this photo immediately went viral. It got picked up by multiple news organizations. It was seen as this like symbol of hope, of like racial reckoning by some people. All of Jen and Sarah's Facebook friends were loving it. They were pumping them up over it. Jen was thrilled to get all this attention. But we all know the nature of social media and the internet, especially around this time. The internet can boost you all the way up to the top of the world. It can make you a national sensation in an instant. But at the flip of a coin, it can turn on you. And just as quickly as you rose to fame, you can fall. And the people that you once thought were allies and friends will turn on you and eat you alive. And that is exactly what happened to Jennifer. When the people of the internet started looking into Devontae and his family, they began to criticize the family. They pointed out that these white moms were like white saviors and contributing to systemic racism. And a lot of people talked about how Devontae appeared to actually look really traumatized in the photo. And I don't know, I think he totally does. Although it's impossible to know, especially given that I now know what happened to them. It's really hard to look at that photo and see anything but a traumatized and abused, vulnerable, innocent child who was being exploited by his own parents. But it turned out to be quite a mess for the Hart moms, who thought that they were like really doing well at this point and had everybody eating out of the palm of their stupid hands. And Jen decided to fight back with all her might, and that did not go well for her either. She tried to make herself seem like a bigger victim. In the past, that had always worked for her. She was a lesbian mom with 6 adopted Black children, for God's sake. She posted on Facebook constantly about how she and her family were being hounded and victimized and receiving death threats. She like privated all her stuff. And it was a very like classic 2014 media controversy. After the fact, there was an extensive search of Jennifer's social media and computer and all that stuff, and no death threats were ever found. So I feel like it was just more lies. At that point, Jen decided she privated all of her social media and then she completely withdrew. Because as we know, Jennifer was no good at taking criticism. The second there was criticism, it was, fuck you, gone. But this was so much. This was not just one individual coming at her and saying like, why are you abusing your kids? This was a mob, as it always is, because it's social media. 2016. Jen got super into online gaming, like really into it. She became some sort of like game leader with some online team stuff and was like the leader and like keeping track of points and shit. Like this was her life, was the games. And again, another world in which I know nothing about. And that's where she instead of getting into like the extremely left-wing political rallies and hippie kind of shit that she was doing before, now she was in the online gaming community. And so she like would talk with all these people and socialize within these online communities. And it's just like, it was a new community for her to master. The family moved to Woodland, Washington. She claimed that she was like driven out and she had to move there because like reporters were hounding at their door all the time. And she didn't want Devontae doing any interviews. Again, no evidence that ever happened. So they moved to Woodland, Washington, where they purchased a very large property. They got some chickens. And Jennifer continued to thrive in the online gaming community. And just like the Facebook community before and the whatever the hell rally stuff people community before, these people ate up her bullshit and lies. Everyone was in complete awe of this woman with the 6 adopted Black children, all from difficult backgrounds. She was a lesbian Jesus, basically. She was also this like really good gamer, so like people praised her for that too. So, you know, this was what she needed. Like this was what kept her alive, was all this praise. But things were not going as well for the Hart family as she made it seem to at least the gaming community. In September of 2017, the father of the Harts' next-door neighbor called the police and had this to say.
What's going on there?
Well, they have 4 Black children, which that part doesn't matter, and they're new here in Texas. But the other night, a little girl jumped out of the 2nd-story window on the roof and then down onto the ground and ran to my daughter, and this is like 2 a.m, begging them to help her.
When did that happen?
About 3-4 nights ago.
Okay.
And my son-in-law doesn't want to get involved, but the more I sit on it, I just can't live with it. Somebody's got to go there and check on these kids.
And so how old was the little kid that did that ran to your daughter's house?
About 12 years old, 13. And when they came looking for her, she was begging my daughter not to let them know she was there. And then eventually my son-in-law let him know. And then she had all 4 of the kids come back later and to say everything was okay, and they were all standing at attention like they were just scared to death. And I think there's something very serious going on there. And they're here from Texas. The kids might even be kidnapped.
Okay. And so did the girl ever say why she was scared?
No, she was crying, and it was 2 a.m, and my daughter said the biggest problem was she's half awake. She couldn't believe what was going on. And and basically, my son-in-law is like most people. They don't want to get involved. And so he's keeping my daughter out of it. But since she's told me about it, I just can't live with it. I'm very concerned for these kids. I just can't let this go any longer. Those kids, I think, is in very serious danger.
Now, first of all, this son-in-law person sounds like a world-class piece of shit. A child comes to you for help and you don't want to get involved. I don't even have words for that. Okay, that's just, and look, these people have put themselves out there and are interviewed, and you can see who they are online. So I don't want to like hound on them, but I have some words for them. So this guy, the one calling, like, you can hear the worry in his voice. Like, he's terrified for these poor kids, and like enough that he is going behind the backs of the other people involved. So like, you know, at least somebody's trying to do something. But I bet you can guess exactly what resulted out of that call. That's right. Absolutely nothing. It was looked into, but again, no evidence of any wrongdoing. There's nothing they could do, just sick. Later, the DeKalbs were interviewed, and their account of what happened was this. That night, at around 2 a.m., Hannah rang the doorbell and ran into the house and ran right to Dana's bed. Hannah had apparently jumped out of the window, out of the second floor bedroom window, and ran over to the house, and she begged them to hide her. She asked if they could take her back to Seattle. She said she was saying that her moms were racist and abusive, and she pleaded with them to hide her in the house and not make her go back to them. Dana was like, I was like kind of just woken up. I didn't really understand what was going on. And it wasn't very long after that they heard all of the Harts outside calling for Hannah, clearly looking for her. They came over to the DeKalb house and they found Hannah there, probably thanks to this son-in-law dick. Sarah and Jen tried to explain things away, although it was 100% Jen. Sarah said nothing. She said that Hannah had had issues because all these kids were drug babies, meaning they were born addicted to drugs, which was not true. And she was very convincing, and basically said, like, oh, these kids all have behavioral issues. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, so sorry. And the DeKalbs just let Hannah go back with Jennifer and Sarah. The next day, the family were back. They came over in the morning, and Hannah gave them an apology note. And there's a picture of the note right there. Let me just read it. The note says, "Dear Dana Bruce, I stopped this morning because I feel awful about disturbing your peace and worrying you in the middle of the night. I was very frustrated with my brother and didn't handle things very maturely, and I'm sorry for telling lies to get attention. I'm working on being more honest and finding..." Some of it is, you can't see what it says, and finding something to communicate my frustrations. I've been something sad about 2 of our cats dying recently, so I was just very sad and frustrated last night. Thank you for being kind, Hannah. And that just freaking breaks your heart, because you know that was written completely under duress. There's no way that she came up with that. So the DeKalbs accepted the apology, but before they left, Dana asked if it would be okay if she spoke to Hannah alone. And Jen refused and said that they did everything as a family. Shocking. In March of 2018, not long after the Hannah incident, Devontae started coming over to the DeKalb home secretly, asking for food. And at first they gave him food, and then he came back again and again and again until he was coming back 3 times a day begging them for food. And he requested that they leave the food in a box near the fence so that Jen and Sarah didn't see it. He kept coming back asking for very basic staple foods like peanut butter and bread. And as he was doing this, as he kept continuing to do this, he started divulging little bits of information. He told the DeKalbs that his moms were withholding food from them, and he mentioned that Sarah had never used to go along with this. Like, clearly this was something that Jen did, that Sarah would either give them food when Sarah wasn't looking, or be like, Sarah, you have to feed them or whatever. But at this point, Sarah was going along with it. It was 8 or 9 days that went by that every day Devontae would come over asking for food. And I'm sorry, Dana and whatever your husband's name is, but I think it's Bruce. That is way too long to go without telling authorities that children living next to you are not being fed. That is not okay. I'm sorry. I will unequivocally say that. Not okay. Devontae also ended up telling them that everything that Hannah had said that night was true and that she was forced to write that note. On March 23rd, Dana called CPS, and 10 hours later, the Harts were gone. And so if you recall in episode 1, I talked about how the CPS had come to and DSHS had come to look into allegations of child abuse, specifically withholding food. This was the reason that they were there. But by the time they really got into it, it was too late. I'm not trying to judge the DeKalbs too hard, but I would really like to think that if I was in their position, I would have done a whole lot more for those kids. It was very clear that they were in trouble. They described all of these kids as super tiny. They appeared to be way younger than their actual ages. Something was obviously very wrong. And the saddest part of the story is that the DeKalbs are not the only people who these children reached out to for help. They knew something was wrong, and yes, they did try to help, but it was not fast enough and it was not good enough. The Hart children were failed by their birth parents. They were failed by the CPS. They were failed by the foster system. They were failed by the medical professionals who examined them and said that everything was fine. The multiple services who interviewed them in front of their abusers. These children reached out for help so many times in different ways, and they never got it. And it's sick. And while they were suffering through the abuse at the hands of their own mothers, they were being exploited over and over again and used as a prop by their primary abuser so that they could gain status in her community and her freaky little social justice circle. And it's just sick. I think it's very clear that Jennifer was driven by her desire for social status. And when she felt that all of that was going to come crashing down on her, and when it was too much and she couldn't do anything to dig herself out of this hole that she had gotten herself into, and she was going to be exposed, she made the decision, instead of just taking her own life, to destroy her entire family. Because really, to her, and I don't know this, like, I'm not a psychologist, whatever, but to her, you know, if she, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's selfishness. I don't know if it's like, if I can't live like this, none of you can. But she clearly never saw these kids as human. She didn't take these kids in because she knew that they needed to be loved and cared for, and she wanted to be a mom. She took these kids in because she knew that it would make her look good to do so. I also think it's clear that Jennifer was the aggressor. Sarah seemed to go along with whatever Jennifer wanted to do, and it's probable that she was a victim of some sort of emotional abuse, maybe physical abuse, I don't know, at the hands of Jennifer, for sure. But I do not think that is an excuse. She could have saved those children, and she chose instead to help kill them. She could have raised her hand at any time. She could have gone to police and said all these allegations are true. She could have done any of that, but she was a coward. And she helped kill those innocent children. Now, what happened to the Harts is a cautionary tale, and it is a glaring example of why it is so important to advocate for children. It's better to be safe than have 6 children perish at the hands of their own children. This was absolutely avoidable. This could have been prevented so many times. And they're not the only ones. We know who these kids are because of what happened to them and because it turned into such a spectacle online. But this is happening to other kids. There's no way it's not. The system, the way that the Harts were able to gain the system like this, you think they're the only people doing this? Maybe some people do it for financial reasons. As I said, you get money for foster kids. And I don't know, people have a lot of motivations to do this kind of thing. But I don't want anyone walking away from this video going, oh my gosh, this is so shocking, like that this happened. I can't believe it. Like this is what a rare thing to happen. Family annihilations are definitely rare, but the abuse and everything that led up to it is not. This one, I think it's clear that's very much affected me. When people abuse children, it just gets me right in the gut, you know? I highly suggest watching the Atlanta episode. I think he does a really good job at showing like the like, you know, more racial aspects of it. I do think there's a lot of like racism involved in this, and at the heart of it, like the biggest racists in this story to me are the Harts, who, I mean, there's more, but you know, the way they propped up these 6 Black children, knowing exactly what kind of I don't know, social prize they would get out of it is just gross. And the way that everybody around them just ate it up and loved it, it just makes you want to throw up. So yeah, that's the story. Please, if you ever see any sort of anything that looks like child abuse, even just a little whiff of it, say something about it. Like the worst that happens is, you know, somebody gets accused of something and they didn't do it, and hopefully it gets, I mean, don't be that asshole on the bus who's like, oh, some kids are alone. Like kids should be able to take the bus. But like, you know what when you see it. That's all. That's all from me. There's an awful story for you. Please, if you're interested, reach out on Instagram at Who's Knocking Podcast, Twitter at Who's Knocking Pod. I have an email, hello@whosknockingpodcast.com. I've got lots of videos on here. If you just stumbled upon this for the first time, go check it out. Hope you have a good day. And please stay safe out there because you never know who's knocking. This podcast is produced in collaboration with Lost Line Media. Artwork by August Digital. Music by Matthew Cook.